Artemis II, the hidden threat, what NASA found on the Moon and why they are silent. In 2025, 4 astronauts will board the Orion spacecraft and leave Earth orbit for the first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit in over 50 years. The official narrative is simple: Artemis II is a dress rehearsal for the lunar landing missions to come, a 10-day flight that will loop around the Moon, test life support systems, validate deep space navigation, and bring humanity one step closer to building a permanent base on the lunar surface. But what if this narrative is incomplete? What if Artemis II is not a rehearsal but a response? What if NASA discovered something on the Moon, something so disturbing, so incomprehensible that they cannot publicly acknowledge it without triggering global panic? Over the past decade, robotic missions and orbital reconnaissance have returned data that does not fit the established model of a dead airless rock. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has captured thousands of high-resolution images of the surface. Some of these images have been quietly removed from public databases, others remain, but are heavily redacted. Researchers who have gained access to unprocessed LRO data report anomalies, geometric patterns in crater floors that defy natural erosion, sharp angular structures protruding from regolith in regions that should be geologically inert, reflective surfaces that appear and disappear depending on solar angle. These are not mere tricks of light or compression artifacts, they are consistent, repeatable, and located in clusters. Then there are the transient lunar phenomena, flashes of light on the dark side of the Moon detected by multiple independent observatories, gas emissions from the Aristarchus crater, where no volcanic activity should exist, spectroscopic signatures indicating the release of radon and helium-3 at rates inconsistent with passive outgassing. These events occur in cycles. They correlate with Earth's orbital position relative to the Sun. They suggest something beneath the surface is active, responsive, alive. NASA has categorized these observations under the term unidentified geophysical anomalies. The Artemis II mission profile includes a classified objective codenamed Surveyor Echo. The crew will perform a close flyby of the far side, specifically targeting Mare Moscoviense and the South Pole Aitken Basin regions where the anomalies are most concentrated. They will deploy a suite of sensors not listed in the public mission documentation. Ground penetrating radar capable of imaging subsurface structures to a depth of 5 kilometers, magnetometers sensitive enough to detect localized field distortions, passive gamma ray spectrometers designed to identify isotopic signatures associated with artificial nuclear processes. This is not exploration, this is reconnaissance. Block 1: the structures. In 2019, China's Chang'e 4 mission landed in the von Karman crater on the far side of the Moon. The Yutu-2 rover was tasked with geological surveys. It transmitted images of a cube-shaped object on the horizon approximately 80 meters away. Chinese scientists referred to it publicly as a mystery hut and announced plans to investigate. Within weeks, all mention of the object ceased. Official statements claimed the rover had reached the site and determined it was simply a large boulder shaped by impact ejector, but independent analysis of the transmission logs reveals the rover stopped transmitting approximately 30 meters from the object. Its last images show a surface texture inconsistent with lunar rock, smooth, tessellated, reflective. Subsequent orbital passes by LRO over the same region show surface changes, patterns that appear to shift configuration between imaging cycles as if the regolith itself is being rearranged. These changes occur in the absence of seismic activity. No meteorite impacts were recorded in the vicinity, no solar wind events of sufficient magnitude to disturb the surface to that degree. Western space agencies remain silent. Chinese officials have classified all follow-up data under national security directives. But the structures are not limited to one site. High-resolution stereoscopic imaging of the Sinus Medii region reveals a grid of shallow depressions extending over 40 square kilometers. Each depression is approximately 12 meters in diameter, spaced at regular intervals of 50 meters. The statistical probability of such regularity occurring naturally is less than 1 in 10 billion. Geologists consulted by NASA proposed it could be an ancient lava tube collapse pattern, but lava tubes do not form grids, and collapse events do not produce uniform depth across such a wide area. Artemis II will overfly Sinus Medii at an altitude of 100 kilometers. The crew will activate synthetic aperture radar to penetrate the regolith. Preliminary simulations suggest they will detect hollow chambers beneath the surface, chambers with walls too smooth to be natural. If the chambers are confirmed, the mission will be extended. The crew will not return to Earth on schedule. They will enter a holding orbit while ground control determines next steps. This contingency has already been built into the mission architecture. The life support system on Orion is rated for 14 days. The official mission duration is 10 days. The extra 4 days are officially described as margin for operational flexibility. In reality, they are insurance in case the crew needs to remain in lunar orbit, while decisions are made decisions that cannot be rushed. Block 2. The biological threat. The Moon is not supposed to harbor life. It has no atmosphere, no liquid water. Surface temperatures swing from 130 degrees Celsius in sunlight to minus 170 degrees in shadow. Cosmic radiation bombards the surface unimpeded. Any organic molecule would be sterilized within hours. Yet in 2009, the Icarus mission detected water ice in permanently shadowed craters at the South Pole. The discovery was hailed as a resource for future colonization, but the spectroscopic data contained another signature, one that NASA did not publicize: organic compounds, complex carbon chains, amino acids, the building blocks of life. The official explanation was contamination from the impactor itself, the Centaur upper stage used to create the debris plume for analysis. But independent chemists who reviewed the data noted the ratios were wrong. The isotopic composition of the carbon did not match Earth's biosphere. It was older alien. Then there are the spores. In 1967, the Surveyor 3 lander touched down in the Ocean of Storms. 2.5 years later, Apollo 12 astronauts retrieved its camera and returned it to Earth. When technicians opened the camera housing, they found colonies of Streptococcus mitis bacteria alive, viable. The organisms had survived vacuum radiation temperature extremes for 31 months. NASA concluded they were terrestrial contaminants, introduced during assembly, but recent reanalysis using modern genetic sequencing reveals mutations in the bacterial DNA, mutations consistent with prolonged exposure to an unknown mutagenic environment. If microbes can survive on the Moon, then what else can? And if something is already there, adapted to conditions we consider lethal, what happens when humans encounter it? Artemis II crew members will be exposed to the lunar environment in ways previous missions were not. The spacecraft will pass through the Moon's exosphere, a thin cloud of atoms and ions kicked up by micrometeorite impacts. If there are biological agents in the regolith, dust particles will adhere to the hull during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Some of this material will burn off, but some will not. The heat shield is designed to ablate in a controlled manner. Microscopic fragments will survive. Embedded in the ablative material, when the capsule is recovered, those fragments will be brought into quarantine facilities for analysis. But what if quarantine fails? What if the contamination is not biological but informational? Prions are misfolded proteins that can propagate by inducing normal proteins to misfold. They cause neurodegeneration. They are not alive, but they spread like infection. What if exposure to lunar regolith introduces a similar mechanism, a pattern that rewrites neural architecture that alters cognition, perception, memory? Astronauts on Apollo missions reported strange experiences, dreams that felt more real than waking life, a sense of being watched, visual phenomena that persisted after returning to Earth. NASA attributed this to isolation, stress, sleep deprivation, but the reports were consistent across multiple missions. The descriptions matched shared hallucinations of geometric patterns, pulsing lights, a presence just beyond the edge of vision. Artemis II will carry neurological monitoring equipment not present on Apollo. EEG sensors embedded in the crew helmets designed to detect anomalous brain activity in real time. If patterns emerge, patterns that correlate with proximity to specific lunar features, the mission will abort immediately. The crew will be instructed to avoid certain approach vectors to maintain distance from regions flagged as high risk. The public will never know. The mission will be declared a success regardless. The data will be classified. The astronauts will be debriefed under secrecy agreements, their medical records sealed. Block 3. The conspiracy. In August 2023, a former NASA contractor uploaded a series of documents to an anonymous file-sharing platform before disappearing. The documents included mission briefings for Artemis II, marked top secret, SCI-sensitive, compartmented information clearance levels above what most members of Congress possess. The briefings reference an entity designated target PSI, described as a subsurface anomaly exhibiting non-random electromagnetic emissions. The emissions occur in bursts lasting between 3 and 17 seconds. They repeat every 11.3 hours, synchronized with Earth's rotation. This synchronization is the key. If the emissions were natural random geological processes, they would not correlate with Earth's position, but they do, which means whatever is generating them is tracking Earth's movement, responding to it. The contractor documents also reference biotelemetry protocols for Artemis II crew protocols that include neurochemical sampling blood draws every 6 hours, cognitive testing designed to detect subtle shifts in reasoning, language processing, spatial awareness. These are not standard astronaut health metrics, they are screening tools used in neurology departments to diagnose early onset dementia or exposure to neurotoxins. Why would NASA expect Artemis II astronauts to show signs of neurological impairment unless they anticipated exposure to something that causes it? Then there is the contingency abort scenario buried in the Mission Operations Manual. If crew members exhibit behavior classified as non-normative during lunar proximity, the spacecraft commander is authorized to sedate them and initiate immediate return to Earth. Non-normative is not defined. The decision is left to the commander's discretion. This is extraordinary. No previous spaceflight mission has granted such authority. It implies NASA expects the possibility of psychological breakdown, not from stress, not from equipment failure, from something external, something on the moon. Independent researchers analyzing the leaked documents have noted another detail. The mission timeline includes a 48-hour blackout period during lunar far side passage. All communication with Earth will be severed. This is explained as a consequence of being on the opposite side of the moon from Earth, blocking line of sight radio, but previous missions maintained communication via relay satellites. There are relay satellites in position for Artemis II, so why the blackout? One possibility: the crew will be conducting observations that cannot be shared in real-time, observations that require immediate classification, observations of something moving. Conclusion: we were never alone. The moon has hung in Earth's sky for 4.5 billion years. Silent, silver, dead. We built myths around it, gods of the night tides and madness. We walked on its surface. 12 men between 1969 and 1972. They planted flags, took samples, came home. We declared victory and left. But we were never alone. The moon is not a natural satellite. It is too large relative to Earth, its orbit too circular, its composition too similar to Earth's mantle, as if it were torn from our planet in some ancient cataclysm. But the math does not work. The angular momentum required for such an event exceeds what a natural collision could produce, unless the collision was not natural, unless the moon was placed. Artemis II will not answer these questions. It will only deepen them. The astronauts will return. They will smile at press conferences. They will describe the view, the silence, the beauty of Earth rising over the lunar horizon. And they will say nothing about what they saw in the shadows, nothing about the structures, the signals, the presence that watches from beneath the regolith. Because some truths are too dangerous to speak, some discoveries shatter the framework of reality itself, and some missions are not about exploration, they are about containment. The moon does not belong to us. It never did. We are visitors, trespassers in a place far older and stranger than we can comprehend. And when Artemis II completes its flight, when the crew splashes down in the Pacific and the capsule is lifted onto the deck of the recovery ship, we will be told it was a success. But success is a relative term, and the mission is only beginning.